Hey everybody, welcome again to Indian Story Read Along. Today we're going to read a story from the June 1992 edition of Chandamama. If you can see closely, some of these pages are yellow. Chandamama publishes stories from all around the world. This one is from Malaysia, and this is a really interesting story about whether someone's luck makes things happen for them or whether their human behavior makes things happen for them. So let's pay attention to this story. It's super interesting. The story is called How Luck Eluded Him. So let's begin. The Sultan of Malaya had an uncanny knack of predicting things. The rulers of the neighboring states often used to consult him. He had only to look at the person's face and would then be able to give an indication of his or her future. One day, he was strolling in the garden when his eyes fell on one of the soldiers who were on guard duty. They were marching from one end to the other. This soldier was correctly keeping steps with the others, yet his sad face attracted the Sultan's attention. He watched him for a while, then stopped the guards and asked him to step forward. The others continued their marching. As the soldier walked towards him, the Sultan looked intently at his face and came to the conclusion that he was born at a time when the stars were not in a favorable position, that he was passing through a difficult time, and that there was every likelihood of his remaining so. The Sultan took pity on him and wished to help him if he would help himself. The soldier stopped in front of the Sultan and bowed low in obeisance. When he raised his face, the Sultan asked him, "What's your name?" "Kanchi, your majesty," replied the soldier reverentially, meaning respectfully. "Kanchi, how's your family?" queried the Sultan. "Is all well with you?" And then, "Nothing to complain about, your majesty," said Kanchi modestly. "Honestly, I don't have a family. I'm not married. I don't have enough money to buy gifts for my bride." "That's too bad, Kanchi," said the Sultan. "Let's see whether you can have some better days. I shall give you a special work. Wait here till I come back." The Sultan then went inside the palace, and after a while he came out with a long sealed envelope in hand. "I want you to take this letter to the chief of Wanogiri. Here's some money for your food on the way. Go immediately." The Sultan gave him 2 silver coins. Kanchi bowed low again, gave him a smart salute and went away. It was a hot day, and as he walked in the sun, Kanchi grumbled. 2 silver pieces to trudge such a long distance. But he did not stop till he came to a village. He saw the cool portico, that means like a porch, of a house, and sat there to rest. Suddenly the door opened, and who was standing before him than Sura, a fellow soldier who was on leave. "Sura, I didn't know you stay here. How are you?" "Kanchi, how come you're in this part of the world?" asked Sura curiously. "Where are you going? Are you also on leave?" "Leave for me!" exclaimed Kanchi, though wishing very much he had had a holiday. "No, Sura, I'm on my way to Wanogiri to deliver a letter from the Sultan to the district chief there. 2 full days of travel, and he has given me only 2 silver coins," explained Kanchi, expressing his dissatisfaction. "A letter from his majesty," said Sura unbelievingly. "Man, you should consider it an honor to be asked to carry a letter from the Sultan. It only shows how much faith he has in you. I myself would have gone even if there was no money." Look at their attitudes. Kanchi is complaining all the time, but then Sura sees it as an opportunity. Thoughts raced in Kanchi's mind. Here's an opportunity to get myself out of this thankless job. The next moment his face brightened up. "If that be the case, Sura," he said, "will you consider my offer? We'll share the 2 silver coins that the Sultan gave me. Will you go to Wanagiri and deliver the letter?" And there they are on Sura's porch. Sura readily agreed. After all, he was on leave and he was getting one full coin, and from his house the place was just one day's journey. Kanchi shared a meal with Sura and shared the money too before Sura proceeded to Wanogiri. And Kanchi returned to his barracks, pleased with himself as one whole silver coin was his without straining much. Before noon the next day, Sura was at the doorstep of the chief. His was a big house with a garden all around. On one side was his stable with several horses. By the time his knock was answered, Sura had wiped his face clean and patted his disheveled hair into position, making himself presentable. Today he was none other than the Sultan's messenger carrying an important letter. Look at how respectfully Sura is treating this job and how Kanchi just wanted to get out of it. That's important, remember that. I've been sent by the Sultan, he told the servant. Please tell your master I am carrying a letter from him for the chief. The servant rushed inside and soon came back to usher in Sura. The chief was reclining on a bed on the floor and Sura was offered a low platform to sit. That never happens to a lowly soldier. Sura pulled out the sealed envelope. Sir, this has been given by His Majesty with instructions that it be delivered personally. The chief tore open the envelope and took out the letter. As he read the contents, he was smiling. Sura took courage in asking the chief, I hope it contains glad tidings. Indeed it does, remarked the chief. Stay back for lunch when I shall tell you all about it. Make yourself comfortable here and the servant will bring you tea as you rest. That definitely never happens to a lowly soldier. As he was led to a side room, Sura thought, my surmise was right. It's an honor to be the Sultan's messenger. That lazy chap Kanchi, he doesn't know what he missed. Meanwhile, the chief ordered a rich meal, saying he had an important guest. Sura was overwhelmed by the luncheon, which was served on a lavish scale. He ate everything with great relish, all the while pitying his friend Kanchi for his foolishness and thanking his own lucky stars. Luncheon over, the chief took him to the veranda, where they both sat on thick beds supported by cushions on all sides. You mean to say you don't know the contents of the Sultan's letter? Began the chief. Sura nodded his head. His Majesty wants me to give the bearer of this letter the hand of my youngest daughter and accept him as my son-in-law. The Sultan himself would pay the bride price and arrange for all the customary gifts. Look what Kanchi missed. I am accepting the Sultan's offer, but do you agree to marry my daughter? Sura was bewildered when he was told about the contents of the Sultan's letter. Suddenly he remembered he was not the real messenger of the Sultan. It was Kanchi, a mere palace guard like him. Yet why did the Sultan decide that a soldier should marry the chief's daughter? He could not think of any reason or explanation. Anyway, why should he bother now? Fortune had smiled on him, and why should he deny himself the joy and pleasure fate had given him? The wedding was a grand affair. Sura spent all his leave in the company of his bride, and the happy couple later called on the Sultan to pay their obeisance to him and express their gratitude. And there they are right now. The Sultan, who had noticed Kanchi back on duty after 2 days of absence, guessed that something must have gone wrong with him, just as he had thought when he looked at the soldier's face for the first time. His guess was now confirmed when another soldier presented the chief's daughter as his bride. The Sultan had concluded that Kanchi had disobeyed his orders. Instead of punishing him, which would have made matters worse for the soldier, the Sultan took pity on him and decided to give him another chance. Kanchi himself was taken aback when he saw his friend with the Sultan. Later, he accosted Sura and asked him how he had managed to get such a beautiful bride for himself. You seem to have forgotten about that letter from the Sultan that you wanted me to take to the chief of Wanogiri. He then described to Kanchi all that had happened after he delivered the letter. Kanchi went away with a crestfallen face. That means super disappointed. He realized how foolish he had been. A few days later, Kanchi was summoned by the Sultan. He stood before him pale-faced and with shaking feet, but the Sultan put him at ease. He did not question him about the task he had given him earlier. Meanwhile, a servant brought a big watermelon on a tray. "Kanchi, this is for you. Take it home. I'm sure you'll relish it. It's quite sweet." Kanchi bowed low once again. "Thank you, Your Majesty. You're very kind," said Kanchi, emphasizing on the word kind. The Sultan smiled as though he understood what Kanchi had in mind. As he walked home with the watermelon, he realized how heavy it was. He wished his room in the barracks was nearby. On his way, he passed by a tobacco shop and suddenly remembered that he had no stock of tobacco, and he had not bought any because there was not much left in his month's wages. He needed tobacco more than the watermelon, so he decided to sell the fruit. He went to the nearby market, where he found an old fruit seller. Luckily, she was not keeping any watermelon. "Would you like to buy this watermelon from me? It's sweet and juicy." "From where did you get it?" she queried. "It's from the Sultan's garden. His Majesty gave it to me as he was pleased with my duty. I'm a palace guard." "Strange. You're selling away a fruit given by the Sultan himself? I don't believe you got it from His Majesty. You must have stolen it from his garden." "I swear he had himself given it to me," Kanchi protested. "You see, I badly need some money to buy tobacco, and I'll get my wages only after some days. That's why I'm selling it." "All right, I'll accept your word," said the woman. "How much will you take for it?" "It's a huge watermelon. I'll sell it for 50 cents, said Kanchi. This was a long time ago. "Watermelon everywhere is the same, whether it's from the royal garden or elsewhere," the woman bargained. "I shall not buy it for more than 30 cents. Take it or leave it." "That's too little for such a huge fruit, and it's quite sweet, I tell you," said Kanchi. "Come on, we'll settle for 40 cents. "You haven't tasted it, still you say it's sweet, and you want me to believe it?" The woman ridiculed him. "Okay, here's 40 cents, and don't stay here for a moment longer." Kanchi straightway proceeded to the tobacco shop. The woman was feeling thirsty, and as she had no second watermelon to offer to her customers, she decided to eat this herself. "It must be tasty, coming as it does from the Sultan's garden," she mused as she began cutting it open. At first she had thought she had been cheated because it was hollow inside. Everything had been scooped out. The next moment the knife touched something metallic, and when the melon was divided into 2 halves, what did she find other than glittering gold coins and glistening jewelry? You can see that down there, the picture there. Soon word spread about the poor old woman's windfall. People gathered around her, and she told them how she had bought the fruit from a palace guard who had claimed that it was given to him by the Sultan himself. Kanchi too came to hear about the watermelon he had sold to the woman for 40 cents. As he was bemoaning his fate, word came from the Sultan that he wanted him to carry another letter to the chief. However, this time he was not called to the presence of the Sultan. The messenger had brought the envelope with him. Kanchi was happy as the Sultan had given him a chance to atone for his past acts. He hurried to the chief, who opened the envelope and first read the letter and then read out the contents. The letter said the bearer of this letter should be put behind bars. He disobeyed me twice. Some people are born lucky while others seem to have no luck at all. Things go wrong for them even when people go out of their way to help them. Would you call it fate? What do you think? Do you think this was fate, or do you think this was Kanchi deciding he didn't want to do the work, or deciding that something else was more important? What do you think? Some people are just not lucky. And what do you think about the old woman who felt thirsty just at that time? Otherwise, she would have sold the watermelon instead of cutting it open herself. Why don't you contact us on our Facebook page with your parents' permission, Indian Story Read Along, and tell us what you think. You can't comment here because YouTube has disabled the comments, but find us on Facebook, or you can even email us, indianstoryreadalong@gmail.com. Thanks so much for joining in this story. We will see you again next time.